The big break for you, of course, was when you got Jukebox Hero, the musical, and kind of cool that the show sort of had its one of its first performances was in Calgary, and yeah. So how did that all come together for you to get that role?
I mean, really, yeah. Like how lucky for all the performers in Canada who are based in Canada that Foreigner decided to create their musical in Canada. So anyhow, I would receive, even though I'm based here in Nova Scotia, I receive casting calls from all over the country, and I would have seen the audition notice for Foreigner's musical, and before the band name Foreigner caught my eye, it would have been likely their songs. Their songs would have been listed there, and I would have recognized many of those. And then I looked at some of the vocal ranges that they had listed out from note to note, like what your lowest note had to be and what your highest note had to be. And I looked at that for a few of the main characters, and I thought to myself, I can do that, just looking at it on paper. And I thought, and I don't know that many people who can. I've always had quite a high falsetto and I call it a high mix in my upper vocal range. And so anyway, I was like, okay, and this is going to be a big show. Like they're hoping it's going to go to the Ed Mirvish Theatre in Toronto. And, that's really kind of a bucket list for me, is to perform there. So anyway, I started putting together an audition tape, and I kind of virtually crashed the auditions because they were only accepting submissions from Toronto and Montreal. Those would be the two biggest talent pools in the country. And so anyway, I sent a tape anyway, and I said, hey, I hope you'll still consider me. I said, I'll make myself available for the second rounds in Toronto. And so anyway, it was kind of on a whim. I wasn't sure I was going to hear anything back. And then I got an email back less than a week later. I think it was only a few days after I sent the tape. And it was the casting director saying, hey, Geordie, basically, you better be available this weekend because the band and the creative team really like you. And then I looked at what part they were considering me for, and I had submitted for several. And the only one they wanted me to read for when I got to Toronto was the lead role. And so I flew myself to Toronto on my mom's air miles, and I had 3 auditions. Only the first one was guaranteed, but then they kept asking me back. So I had 3 auditions in less than 24 hours. There was a panel of about 11 or 12 people. Mick Jones, the founder of Foreigner, being one of them on the panel. And then there would have been the director, Randy Johnson, from LA, Stephanie Gorin, the casting director, the writers, Dick Clement and Ian Lafrenis. They wrote the screenplay for the Beatles movie musical Across the Universe. And they also wrote the script for the musical. So they were on the panel. It was one of the larger panels I've ever auditioned for. And a really, really cool thing is I left my 3rd audition. And half an hour later, I was in my friend's car. They had come to pick me up. They live in London, Ontario. So we were kind of stuck in traffic trying to get to London, Ontario from Toronto. I was going to visit them. And I got an email from the casting director. And she said, Geordie, please act surprised when your agent tells you this. But I'm so glad you got in touch with us a week and a half ago because you've just been cast in the lead role.
Yeah.
So, that's very, very, very high on my kind of favorite moments of my performing career, is actually getting that email.
Oh, for sure.
Because, not many people knew me in Toronto. I'm based in Halifax, and, you always hear about, people getting a call perhaps, or, casting people, hiring people, I know that I do that as a director and a producer. I always like to have people around who I know. But the fact that I like to say I kind of did this one the old fashioned way, a director who I'd never met before. So yeah, that was pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. And probably, proof that just throw it out there and see what happens. because you never know. And it clearly left an impression on the band because, of course, this fall you are going to be joining the group on their run across Canada.
Yeah.
So how did that all come together?
I uh I kind of just actually got goosebumps as you said that, because it was such an unexpected phone call I got about a year and a half ago. Um because of course we had a pandemic, so the kind of the entertainment world shut down, and uh, I haven't been performing a whole lot, or hadn't been performing a whole lot during the pandemic. And about a year and a half ago, I get a call from Foreigner's manager Phil Carson saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Okay, I haven't talked to you, Phil, since 2019." And he says, "There's hopes that the musical will come back." And there's also, we're looking at the possibility of maybe you joining the band on stage sometime soon. And so that was a real pleasant surprise. And Phil made it very clear at the time that exactly what you said. I did make a lasting good impression with the band, and in particular with Mick Jones.
Mhm.
And which is, really, you know, that's also, that moment is also pretty high up on my favorite moments of my career, is getting that phone call, um, to, uh, to know that they even remembered who I was, to be frank. And to know that, um, yeah, to know that Mick, still wanted to have me involved with the
Mhm.
show and with the band. And so they did get me to record a few songs for them, just to kind of check in. And so I recorded with this microphone right here. I recorded "Feels Like the First Time" and "Jukebox Hero" and "Waiting for a Girl Like You," just as a check in. Sent that off to them, and I actually, before anything got confirmed, I actually got to be in Cleveland. I got to see them inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was amazing. And shortly after that, kind of the ball really got rolling, and um, they said, "Hey, will you join us on our Canadian tour?" And the
Mhm.
Canadian tour is kind of going to serve. We're hoping that it's going to line up with the relaunch of the musical. And so that got announced this past March, the end of March, beginning of April. And then kind of as a nice warm up, I just got to perform with the band on stage for 2 nights in Windsor, Ontario, at the
Mhm.
Coliseum at Caesar's Palace there, and I got to do a few numbers with them. And yeah, I had been on stage with them once before. So back in 2019, a few weeks after the musical closed in Toronto, Foreigner happened to be finishing up the Canadian leg of their Cold as Ice tour right around then. And so their final night also happened to be right here in Halifax. So they brought me up on stage as a surprise for my hometown crowd,
Mhm.
and I got to sing "Hot Blooded" with them. So it had been 6 years since I had been on stage with them, and so I kind of called this past July like a re-baptism by fire.
For sure.
But it was awesome. We had 2 sold out nights of 5,000 people there. It was awesome, and it kind of was like kind of like riding a bike. And I and Phil was there too, and he said to me afterwards, he was like, "It takes balls, man, for you to get up there and do that." And I
Mhm.
said, I said, "Yeah," I said, "It's sure a little bit different than practicing those songs in my living room." So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And so
yeah,
yeah, you alluded to it. You've performed with the band a few times in the past, but never, like a full show and a full tour like this. So what's the preparation looking like? Are you gonna like run through everything with the band before you guys start playing, or is it you just go out there and do it?
yeah. Well, there is something to be said about this material and this music. And it's forever a balance between, um, you know, wanting to wanting to make sure I'm at my best, because I do have to be at my best vocally with these tunes. They're not
Hmm.
easy. And so making sure I'm on top of my game, just health-wise, physically, and making sure I'm able to access all that high sweet spot that I need to have. And so there's, paying respect to that, but then also not not letting it get too big and too intimidating. And so I do actually have to remind myself every now and then, like, hey, look, it's Mick who really has invited you to be a part of this. And so I do have to remind myself sometimes when I get a little overwhelmed by it all. Originally when I would have been first chatting with the band, I would have been under the assumption that it was going to be Kelly and I on the road together. And actually now it's going to be me and Luis Maldonado on the road together across Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just announced that he's going to be taking over the microphone for Kelly. And so I actually think this will be like the first or one of the first chunks of time that it'll be Luis
Mm-hmm.
at the mic. And so I'll be there as well, singing some songs. And the nice thing is that we did have July as a warm up. And so nice to have that under my belt. And then we are going to get together for a few days before the tour across Canada. It's rock and roll though. It is different. Like it's different than, in the theater world, we often think that, 3 or 4 weeks of rehearsal is still a short period of time. But being in the rehearsal hall 8 hours a day for 3 or 4 weeks with, the same people around you, the crew around you, that is different than, how rock and roll works. And so it is certainly a different experience for me. A lot of, it's a long-winded way of saying a lot of the prep work is stuff I got to do on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be on my A game. And,
Yeah.
it really comes down to taking care of myself. Because I got to be at 100% in order to pull these songs off for sure.